Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the Girly Book Club's Meet the Author with Julianne MacLean. We are so thrilled to have her tonight and to give us a scoop on this month's book, A Curve in the Road. We've got some great giveaways throughout this live meeting, so if you're tuning into the playback afterwards, don't worry, we've also got you covered there with the giveaways. We've got 4 amazing prize packs from our partners at Book Trib. Each prize pack contains 4 different titles, including The Bookshop of Yesterdays, Call Your Daughter Home, Moments We Forget, and Tower of Songs. So now let's get into it. Julianne MacLean is a USA Today best-selling author and has sold more than 1.3 million books in North America alone. Her novels have also been translated into over half a dozen different languages. She is the author of more than 30 novels and is a 4-time Romance Writers of America Rita finalist and has won the Booksellers Best Award and the Book Buyers Best Award. You are very well accredited, Julianne. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I didn't know about Girly Book Club until you guys invited me, and then I went and looked you up, and you look like an amazing book club and organization, and I'm just so impressed and thrilled to be here.
Oh, that's amazing. And we did talk about this, and we're going to touch upon this in a minute, but now you are also an honorary member of our Girly Book Club chapter in Halifax.
Yay! Oh, that's great.
Family.
Thank you.
So for those people who maybe haven't had the chance to read or to finish A Curve in the Road yet, what would you tell us about the story?
Well, it's about a female physician. She's a surgeon, and she thinks she has this perfect life and a husband she loves and a wonderful son. And she's heading home one night from her mother's home, and on the highway she gets into an accident with a drunk driver. And I'm not sure about giving away spoilers here, but what she finds out about the drunk driver is surprising and shocking to her. And this kind of leads her down a path to discover secrets that her husband might have been keeping from her. Let's just leave it at that. So yeah, I don't want to give too many spoilers away. But yes, it's at the end, I think it's more of a coming of age story for the main character. She has to learn to deal with difficult things and learn to forgive, and I think she does in the end. And it's an uplifting. It's a rough road along the way, but uplifting at the end.
It's a very interesting story. I love that the action starts off right away, and it just gets more complicated as it progresses. Where did the inspiration for this story come from?
It's funny, I was asked this question last night, and I had certain elements that I wanted to put in the story. I wanted to write a book with a dog in it, and I wanted to write something with a medical side. And so putting those two things together, I was looking for something with a service dog, perhaps, and I was thinking of maybe epilepsy or where a dog, sometimes they can be, I liked the idea of a dog that's intuitive and can sense when something's going on with the main character. And so then I didn't want to do epilepsy, and then I came across narcolepsy because I think I'd seen a documentary about it years ago, about this man who had narcolepsy and would fall asleep in the park, and his dog would be there to either warn him this was going to happen. And so I wanted to do that, and so I looked in, well, how does someone get narcolepsy? And it can, I mean, sometimes it's kind of a mystery about how people come down with it, but it can happen with a head injury. And I had a car accident myself when I was in my 20s. So basically the car accident that you read about is exactly what happened to me, except it wasn't a drunk driver that hit me, but I did roll down an embankment. And so the experience of it was a little bit therapeutic for me to write about. So it just seemed like that was the way to go. And certain things that happen in the story, I didn't have figured out until I started writing. And you know, then it's sort of the story reveals itself as you're going along. So this book was more of a by the seat of my pants story than other books have been, where I've plotted them out. and I know exactly what's going to happen from start to finish, because the last third of the book I didn't have figured out. I got about 3/4 of the way through, and I was like, okay, now what's going to happen? And it took me, I think I wrote a first draft and I wasn't happy with it, and I had to redo the ending, which I added some other elements. Without spoiling it, well, that'll spoil it. Am I okay to give spoilers? Is everybody okay with it, do you think? Can we assume everyone's read it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Full
so
disclosure now, for people watching the playback, if you have not finished this book, you do not want spoilers.
yeah. Okay, so yes, at the end, the whole secret baby, that was not in the first draft. And it was more of just the main character forgiving this woman who was the other woman in her husband's life. But when the baby came into it, it just changed everything, how she related to her son and the decisions she made with her son. And I don't think she would have made the same decisions if it weren't for the baby. So that was something that came at the very end, after I had already written the ending, which I felt kind of was anticlimactic. And I felt that adding that in, and it was my critique partner who said to me, you need something more here. And I knew I needed something more. And she threw it in. What if she has a baby? And so then I was able to work with that.
Yeah, I definitely did not see that coming. That was a great little twist that I did not see coming. But I think it really did show us a different side of Abby, who, was ready to, I think, not partake in any more encounters with this woman, but she ultimately, put her interests and herself aside so that her son could have a relationship with the half-sibling.
That's right. And it's funny, that whole situation of her throughout the book trying to decide whether or not she was going to tell her son about what her husband had done. And I struggled with that myself through the book. And I didn't know when I was writing it, when she was struggling with the decision, should I tell him or should I not? And I was also kind of ruminating over all the possibilities of that. And it's funny, I've talked to readers, and some of the readers who have said, no, they would never, they would have taken it to their grave. And other readers say, no, she should be telling him. So it's one of those things that I think it's good for, it's good for discussion about a book. It's the kind of book that people talk about it and can disagree with how it should have gone or how it should have played out. It could have played out this way or that way, or the decisions that the characters made. And I like to write stories that allow the reader to decide for themselves whether they agree or disagree. And not all readers will agree with some of the decisions that Abby made. And that's okay. I think I think it's good for readers to make up their own mind about, the way the story should go and what the characters should or shouldn't do. And they're not perfect characters who it's crystal clear what should be done all the time. Like, some decisions in life are just really difficult and complex, and talking about it always helps. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of writing about Abby being a doctor and her partner being her husband being a doctor as well, what kind of research did you do in terms of writing this part of your character, and then also going into the narcolepsy as well? What kind of research did you need to do for the writing process?
Yeah, I find often the best research that I get are memoirs. And I read a wonderful memoir, and I think I mentioned it in the back of the book, and it's about a young woman who developed narcolepsy when she was in university. So it was her whole experience. So I really got a wonderful sense of how it feels and all the emotional things that the character or a person goes through when they discover that they have this. And she also would go into a lot of the medical details about it. So, and then I went on YouTube, and there's all kinds of videos of video blogs from people who have narcolepsy, and they'll film themselves when they have an episode. So that was really helpful, and they talk about how it feels. So I did a fair bit of research with that. As far as the operating room or the emergency room at the beginning, I'm very fortunate in that my husband is a physician, and he does. He does OR assisting, so I can come to him and ask him for those, like the details, the exact details of what would the doctor be saying here? What's his dialogue? And my husband would read the scene, or I'd tell him what's happening, and he'd say, well, he would give this or give this drug. So he's very handy to have around the house, my handyman husband, when it comes to writing. So yeah, he'll be very helpful with any kind of medical stuff. But then he'll look up to the information for me and give it to me, and then I have to read it myself because I'm the one who's writing it. But he's a great resource for anything medical.
That's perfect. That's a very convenient resource for sure.
Yeah.
Do you think any future characters will need that kind of expertise that you can lean on him for?
Yes, absolutely. And I actually love anything medical in books. I find anything that's and I think it has to do with, when you learn about conflict when you're writing books, and there's those basic kinds of conflicts: man against nature, man against himself, man against man, and any kind of threat to your safety is a conflict for the character. And I feel that health issues are something that we can all relate to, because we've all been in hospitals. It's a fear we all have of losing your health or getting into an accident. So, and I find there's so many interesting medical conditions that are fascinating. And it's just, yeah, I know that I'll be doing more medical scenes in future books, and I've done them in previous books as well, fairly often. And I often draw from my own experiences in hospitals that have been frightening and painful, and oftentimes, in most cases, it's turned out okay. But I find I end up writing often about things that frightened me or were in my own life. And I've always, you look back on those things and you go, what if it had turned out badly? What if this had happened? What if that had happened? Mm-hmm. And I often will write about those things that have happened to me, but I'll take it in the worst case scenario. And I think, like I said, sometimes it's therapeutic, I think, because I've written about car accidents a couple of times. And, after I had my car accident, one of my worst fears was driving beside a body of water or a lake and going off the road and landing in the water and being trapped in my car. So I wrote there's a scene in one of my previous books with that exact thing where that happens to the character, and it's the worst, my worst fear, basically. And then I'll write about it, and maybe that helps me. I don't know.
That's really interesting that it's, that situation that has happened to you has now appeared in several of your works, and it is perhaps a way of processing or, just exploring the other outcomes and how it could have played out and, what that might have looked like. That's really interesting that you bring that into your work.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, other things too in my life that have happened, and they pop up in my books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also really appreciate, in terms of the medical aspect of your storyline, that you do include these medical conditions, but it's not necessarily the main story. It's not, this whole book is about a person with narcolepsy. It's about, a person that is part of her life, and it's a big part, but it's not the thing that defines her. Mm-hmm. So I think it's great to shine a spotlight on that.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed that. And yes, and I find as a reader, I enjoy reading books that develop and transform throughout the book. And you'll be going down a certain path, and then it'll veer right or left, and it'll take you in a new direction that you didn't expect or didn't see coming. I just like as a reader, I like things that are unpredictable. I don't like to go down the straight and narrow path from start to finish without ever, veering off on a tangent. I don't want to call it a tangent because it ends up being part of the story and it takes you to where you need to be in the end, but it's not straight ahead route. It goes left and zigzaggy. And I enjoy that when I'm reading. So, and I enjoy it when I'm writing as well.
Mm-hmm. I think you did give a good left right There was a little bit where I thought, okay, has she turned into an unreliable narrator? Or what is going on here? Something is not right, And so I think that was a great allusion to something is not right. And we're going to get there, but we're going to have to wait a little bit.
Yes. And I love books. I love books with unreliable narrators. And that was on my mind. And I wanted the reader to think, oh my goodness, what's going on, and not know. And, but then again, I sort of lead you down that path of this is an unreliable narrator. And then I take a sharp right turn, which I like left and right turns.
Yes. Well, it worked. I fell for all of it.
Oh, good.
Exactly what you were aiming to do when it came to movies. So I want to talk about the dog, because I'm a total dog person, full disclosure. And Ariana, our host from Denver, noted that she had many ladies who did not want to finish the book if Winston did not make it. So as we discussed earlier, people who love dogs and people who love their animals take it very seriously. Can you tell us a little bit more about Abby and her relationship with Winston, her golden retriever, and why you chose to include him and have him be a pretty prominent character in the story and to the family?
Yeah. Well, I'm a dog lover too. I have a dog. She's a little Havanese, adorable little Havanese named Molly. But I love, and I can't, she's a hypoallergenic dog, so I can't have a dog that sheds because my husband's allergic. So I can never have a golden retriever. And I just love golden retrievers. I've known them, friends have had them, and they're just such beautiful dogs. So that's why I just chose that breed. And I named him Winston because, strangely enough, when I was sort of researching my next book, which was going to be a World War II story, and I had already started reading about Winston Churchill. So the dog is really named after Winston Churchill. That's where that name comes from. But as far as Abby's relationship with the dog, we can have such intimate, loving relationships with our pets. And they can be soulmates too, I really believe. And that's what I wanted to create, that sense that Winston was a soulmate for her when she lost the man who she believed was her soulmate. So I wanted her to have that, that, I don't want to say person in her life, but that soul in her life who, gets her at every minute and is there for her no matter what. And Winston was, and I enjoyed writing about Winston. I loved Winston.
I loved Winston as well. I was very happy for him to be in the book and very relieved that all was well.
And at the end too, that he, makes a new friend at the end on the beach in the last scene. I enjoyed that, writing that part too.
It gave me like some Disney Lady and the Tramp kind of vibe, like Winston also found his other soulmate.
Yes.
He's got a furry friend to, play with and hang out with.
Yeah, that's right.
What can you tell us about your writing process for A Curve in the Road specifically, but also beyond and from some of your other books?
Yeah. I'm very disciplined in terms of my daily production schedule, I guess you could call it. I tend to, one thing I do is I write longhand with a pencil on I'll show you, this is the kind of notebook actually that I use. It's this one's very loud, but lined paper, coiled notebook. So it's, here's this is what, some of that's what it looks like. And so I write the story longhand, and then I dictate it the next day. I will always try to keep up and dictate what I wrote the day before. Before I get started, I'll wake up the next morning, dictate what I wrote the night before, and do a little bit of revision on it. And I'll write a little bit in the morning. I might get a couple pages done. And then I take the afternoons off. I do either run errands, go to the grocery store, get some exercise, go for a walk. And then I work again for another 4 to 5 hours in the evenings. And that's usually my peak writing time, where I get the most words on the page. And I think it's just my natural body clock, and I finally surrendered to it, because I used to get up in the morning and try to start at 9 o'clock and go for 8 hours and write during the day. And it just did not work. I just couldn't get the pages down. But at 3 o'clock, the wheels come ungreased and I would just flow. So I finally just given into it, and I write in the evenings when I'm doing a first draft. But I have a strict schedule in terms of 40 pages a week. So some days are better than others. I might do 8 pages one day, 3 pages on a really slow day, and sometimes I can do 10 or 12. So it all comes out in the wash at the end of the week. There's got to be 40 pages. So oftentimes Sundays I'm, I have to write to catch up to make sure I reached my goal for the week. So that's when I'm writing the first draft. And to me, I don't want to say that's the easy part, but the hardest part for me is coming up with the story idea and fleshing it out, the plot and what's going to happen and how's it going to end, how's it going to start, what are the twists and turns going to be. That really takes me a while, and I try to get it written out in a outline form or synopsis form before I even start. And then once I start, it's just a matter of discipline and sitting down day by day and getting those words written and so sometimes it can go fast, and other times, well, the book that I just finished, my next book that comes out in August, that was just a longer book. It went so much longer than I expected. Most of my books are about 250 pages, manuscript pages, and this one was 550 manuscript pages. So it was kind of like writing 2 books back to back, because it just wouldn't end. It just kept going. And I thought I would be done by June, and then it was August, and anyway, it just took a lot longer than I expected.
I mean, that's a pretty hefty book, and I do want to learn more about that before I jump into it. I have a question here from Nicole. She said, I loved the last lines of the book. Happiness may recede sometimes, but then it comes back. It always comes back. Did you have those concluding sentences in mind from the beginning, or how did it come to you?
I would say, I didn't have those exact sentences in mind, but almost every book I've written over the past number of years has a very clear ending like that the last few sentences are about happiness and finding your joy and your purpose. And so I say, in all the books that I read, I always try to make them uplifting at the end, so you feel hopeful and positive, and life is tough, and sometimes, and you go through, like, I sometimes describe my books as tragedy with a happy ending, because there's all kinds of tragic things that happen along the way. And then sometimes I think the worse the tragedy is in the book, the more satisfying it is at the end when the person comes out of it and gets on the other side of it. And I think that's the way life is. Like, there's highs and lows, good days and bad days, and sometimes you can go through months of a really rough period, and then you come out on the other side of it. And I like to give everybody hope that even when things seem so hopeless and dark, and that you're going to get a second wind, and it's with time will go by, and things change, and things will get better. And so, yeah, a lot of my books have that theme, and pretty much always the last few sentences are something punchy like that, to hit it, make it clear that that's what life's about to me. Yeah.
Hitting that high note. Lovely. I love it. Got another question here from Katie. She says, how does your writing contemporary fiction differ from writing your romance novels? Is it easier or more difficult?
I think it's both. When I was writing historical romance, I loved historical romance, and it was what I read all the time. So it just was natural to me to write that. And I wrote 19 historical romances, and just after that amount of time, I just needed I needed something different to do something creatively. I needed a change. So then I switched to writing contemporaries, and that first one that I wrote was The Color of Heaven, and that was actually that was difficult to get my voice right. And when I first gave it to my agent, it felt clunky to her, and she it took a while. And I put it away. I wrote a bunch of it, and I put it away for years, to be honest, and then came back to it. And when I looked at it again, I was able to look at it, see it with fresh eyes, and smooth out the voice. And I think it had the sense that I was trying too hard or something, because it just wasn't natural, because I hadn't been writing it for so long. But I've been writing historicals. But once I started writing one book and then another book and then another book, it does, like anything else, you get better at it with time. And after a certain number of contemporaries, it was just like flow. So it's much easier to write now. But I think only because I've been writing them for a while now. I've done a number of them. So, yeah.
Can you tell us how you got into writing and how you got into becoming an author as your full-time career?
Yes. Yeah, that's a funny story. 'Cause when I graduated from high school, I did an English degree because it was my favorite subject in university. That's why I majored in English, but it never even dawned on me that I could be an author or a novelist. It wasn't even on my radar. I didn't know what to do with my life in my early 20s. And then I ended up going back to school to get a business degree in accounting to get a real job. So that's what I did. And I think I lasted a couple of years as an accountant. And then I was going home at nighttime, taking my laptop, starting to write a book, and ended up quitting the accounting job. And my boss thought I was insane when I told him what I wanted to do, because it was a really good job with a pension, all that stuff. And I was like, I want to write romance novels. And he just thought I was crazy, but it all worked out well, thankfully. But it's funny though, because the fact that it didn't occur to me that I could be a writer or that I should be a writer. I used to keep a diary when I was starting from the age of 12 until I got married, and when I was 27. And I would write in it every night, and every day when interesting things would happen to me, I would look forward to writing in the diary. And so, I was a writer. I wanted to write. I just didn't realize it could be a career, a profession. And I'm glad when I finally did I thought, okay, well, I think I could write a romance novel. That sounds like something fun. And then I started, reading a bunch of them. But again, it was a lot harder. It's harder than people think. It looks, I think the books that look effortless and seem effortless when you're reading them, it takes a lot of effort to make it look effortless, the writing itself. And it took me years to get my voice, that smooth flow of words, so that it just feels natural, sounds natural to the reader. And I once heard that you have to write 1 million words before you really reach the mastery level. And I think it's probably true, because it was my 5th book that sold the first time. So those first 4 books, ended up under my bed, and I learned from each one, but I got better and better, and was submitting them and getting rejected with publishers. And then finally, I think I reached a level where my voice sounded like a published author should sound. And I was able to sell that first book.
So that was the point when you felt that you had got to the point where you were confident in your writing and that you had found your voice, was the first book that you had published, but not the first book you had written.
Yes. Although I think I did feel confident on those first books when I wrote them. I thought it was a masterpiece. That first book I wrote, I thought, wow, this is great. It's so good. But then going back later and reading it, I realized it really wasn't that. There were problems with it. My writing was, a little clunky and all of that. But at the time, I thought it was brilliant. But now I understand why it got rejected. And I'm glad that it got rejected, because I wouldn't want those old books out there in the world.
Yeah, fair. I've got another great question here that's being asked. The question is inquiring if you have had any close friends that have shared the pain of infidelity, because you captured it so well. That is part 1. So we'll go into that. Have you experienced that in your life from like your circle of family and friends? Because you did write about it from a really great place of.
Yeah. Oh, well, first of all, I'm very glad that it came across authentic, that it was authentic. You know, I no, I wouldn't say that I've had close friends that have experienced it and have told me about it, but I've experienced it, not in my marriage, my husband's wonderful, but in previous relationships. I was cheated on. Before my husband came along, my wonderful husband. So I know how it feels. And sometimes I would have, every once in a while, I'll have a nightmare, a dream that my husband is cheating on me. And it's one of those, it's a fear I guess everyone has. And it feels so real. And I wake up and I'm just heartsick and it's painful. So I think with a lot of writing, a lot of the books that I've written, it's my imagination of if this happened to me, how would it feel? And that's pretty much what I go by, really, is how I think I would feel if this happened. When I'm writing, I tend to really deeply get into my character's head and skin, and I feel like I am that person when I'm writing about them. And I can get, if I'm writing a tense scene, I physically tense up, and I'm like, and then I come out of it, I'm done the scene, and I'm like, I have to relax and take a breath because I'm so worked up from whatever it was that I was writing. So it's imagination, really. It's not anybody. It's not researching someone else who's been through it and asking them how it felt. It's me asking myself, how would I feel if it was me? Yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing that insight. We've got another question here about the relationship with Zach. Did the dialogue come from any real life experience with your children? You have a child, right? A daughter?
Yes, I do. I have a daughter. She's 22. She's in university, and she's very mature and emotionally intelligent. And I'm so grateful for that. So I can have conversations with her, and she just, I think she's older than her years. She's very wise. So, I was writing, Zach's a male character, but I've met some really amazing, some of her friends that have been so intelligent for their age. And I wanted to write about a young man who was that way. Admirable and honorable and wise, and I don't think it's not unrealistic. I think there's lots of young people out there that are just quite amazing, and yeah, so that's kind of where that came from. Yeah.
Sorry, I put myself on mute there. He was a really, mature character. I think of myself as a teen, and I thought I was mature at the time, but yeah, reading your book, I thought, yeah, that is one mature kid. He's wise, he's smart, he's caring, he wants to look after his mom, and he's willing to put himself and his dreams on hold, in terms of like going away to school. And I thought it just felt touching that even though she lost her husband, she still had, her core family between Zach and Winston, and her mom as well, and her sister.
Yeah, I know a lot of the books that I write, the characters, the relationships, the family relationships are, I think, the way it should be. Sometimes we all have dysfunctional moments, but I've been very fortunate that I had two amazing, loving parents who talked to me about things, and it was a happy home, and that's what I write about. Usually my stories, the families are close knit and open with each other and communicate openly, because that's sort of the way I grew up. In the home I grew up, we talked to each other about anything, and we were forgiving with each other, and would be compassionate with each other and understanding about our mistakes. And I was just very fortunate to live in a house, like grow up in a home like that. So I write about that. And I think it's a good example for, families and couples and mothers and fathers and children to see how you talk to each other and be open and not hide things from each other and confess your feelings and then be sensitive to the other person's feelings. And so I try to write about those kinds of characters.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you did it very well, for sure.
Oh, thank you.
I do want to talk about the fact that you went to our Halifax Girly Book Club last night and joined the meeting there. Thank you so much for joining them. I'm so thrilled that you were able to make it to one of our meetings and get to experience that, but also that the members had the opportunity to talk real time with one of our authors. What was the experience like? Do you get to attend book clubs often, either as, a guest speaker discussing your books, or are you a part of a book club yourself?
I'm not a part of a book club myself, but I love the idea of it. I think it's because with my writing, I have to do so much reading for research or whatever. So I can't, I think if I was in between books, I could probably squeeze in a book club thing, which would be really fun. But yeah, no, it was great fun last night. I met all the ladies were lovely and they had great questions, and it was in a lovely restaurant with a beautiful view of the harbor and the Halifax skyline. So it was really fun. And I met just a couple of really lovely ladies. I met another author who came to the meeting, and we're going down to Wolfville on Saturday. So we're going to drive down together and go to a writers meeting together. So that was really fun. She was just lovely. So I made a new friend.
That is so awesome. That is so great to hear. I mean, that is the whole intent behind the Girly Book Club, is that we are united over books, but really it's about meeting other like-minded women and creating a community and fostering friendships. So I'm so happy to hear that that happened for you.
Yeah.
And you're always welcome at our book club. Even if you're too busy to read the book, you're always welcome. You can just come, enjoy the chit chat, have a glass of wine, and relax.
That sounds just peachy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So tell us about your new book that's coming out in August, titled A Fire Sparkling. What can we learn? What can we learn about that story?
Yeah, so that one I wrote, I moved to London, England for a year with my husband because he had to go and he was doing a master's degree over there. So that was just a dream to spend a year in London. And I knew I was going to write a book while I was there, but I didn't know what it was going to be about. And World War II is really big over there. Let's just say that they're big on history, and because they were bombed. London was bombed in the 1940. So there's so much history there, and they're really, everywhere I went, I was just stumbling across stuff from World War II. And I kept resisting the idea. I was like, no, I'm not going to write a World War II story because there's a lot of books out there about World War II. I'm not going to do that. And then it just eventually was like, okay, I'm going to write a World War II story. And there was a moment where I was in a theater play, actually, and it was set during that time period. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'm inspired by this. So I started researching it and going to the museums. They have great museums over there, and reading a lot of research books. So anyway, long story short, it's a World War II book, but it's a dual timeline. So it also has a contemporary female character who, interestingly enough, and this is only just occurring to me now, also is dealing with some infidelity in her life. So it goes back and forth in time. And again, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but it comes out on August 1st, and I think I'm excited about it. I can't wait for it to come out, for readers to read it.
Exciting. It sounds great. It sounds like it would be right up our alley. Our community loves historical fiction, so we can't wait to read it.
Oh yeah, I hope that you will. And it's I think if people enjoyed Curve in the Road, they would enjoy that book as well, because it's a fast-paced story with lots of twists and turns like Curve. And again, it has a contemporary character in it as well as the historical, and it's all about women. It's female characters and strong women, and I'm proud of that book.
Amazing. It sounds great. Sounds right up our alley.
Yeah.
Our book club members are always looking for next great books to read, so we'll keep an eye for yours in August. But do you have any book recommendations for us? Like you said, you're writing a lot, so I don't know how much time you have to read, but if you could give us one book reco, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. Well, one of my favorite books of last year was Before We Were Yours. I don't know if you've already done that book or not, by Lisa Wingate.
No.
Fabulous, fabulous. I would highly recommend that one. And the other book that I loved last year, and it's an older title, and the author just passed away, Rosamund Pilcher, The Shell Seekers. That's a book that any reader who likes women's fiction, to me, that is the shining be-all, end-all of women's fiction. It was such a good book. The Shell Seekers. So even though it's an older title, and I know you guys probably are maybe usually reading newly released books, if you ever feel like going back into the archives and trying something older, I think it came out in the 1980s.
Okay. Yeah, we typically end up reading work that's been published within the last year or so, not super, super recent releases, but our members are avid readers, and they read most often more than one book a month. So there is room to add to those TBR piles and lists like this one behind me. And I'm sure everyone at home has a similar stack. So
yes,
those are great recommendations. Thank you. Ladies, any final questions for Julianne that I can ask on your behalf, or that you can ask if you would like to? Any final notes you want to add, Julianne?
Oh, I don't think so. I just want to say thank you so much for picking my book. I'm so honored and delighted and thrilled, and really happy to be here and to have been able to go to the book club meeting last night. That was wonderful.
Yes, thank you again. It was really amazing that you can make it out to that. And thank you so much for making the time to be with us here tonight, virtually. That's much appreciated. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.